Hello and welcome. Today's presentation is on how to name organic compounds, and this is presented to you by Science Visualized. The first functional group we look at is alkenes, and alkenes ends with ane, alkane. An example of that is this alkane that has 1, 2, 3, and 4 carbons, and because it has 4 carbons, the name is butane. See the ending, ane, butane. Next, we look at this cyclic alkane, and that cyclic alkane has 1, 2, 3, and 4 carbons. So each corner is a carbon, and because it has 4 carbons, then the parent name is going to be butane because it has 4 carbons. But now because it's cyclic, you add this word cyclo. So the name becomes cyclobutane. Next, we look at alkenes. Alkenes contain double bond. So it has carbon-carbon double bond. And the name ends with ene. So remember, alkenes was ane. Now alkene is ene, meaning a double bond. An example of that is this compound here that has 1, 2, 3, and 4 carbons. And because it's 4 carbons, we say but, and then because it's an alkene, now in. It ends with in. And because the double bond is on the first carbon, number 1, then we say 1-butene. Or you could say but-1-ene. But generally, because it's on number 1, we don't have to say that. So just butene will work. In this next example, we see that the double bond is between carbon number 2 and number 3. And still, it has 4 carbons, so the parent name is still butene. But now we have to show the position of the double bond. It's on carbon number 2 and 3. Because 2 is lower, then it becomes 2-butene. Or you say but-2-ene. Next, we look at alkyl halides. So it has an alkyl group and halide. So Rx, where the halide, the X part, can be chlorine, bromine, iodine, or fluorine. Group 7A in the periodic table. If you look at this first example here, we have this carbon number 1 is connected to iodine, so it's an alkyl iodide. And then 2, 3, and 4 carbons. And because it's 4 carbons, then the name becomes, the parent name becomes butane. But now you have iodine on carbon number 1, so that's iodo for iodine. So it becomes 1-iodobutane. Or you could just say iodobutane, because if it's position number 1, you don't have to show the position. In this example, we see that the bromine is connected to carbon number 2, and the alkyl part has 1, 2, 3, and 4 carbons, so it's still a butane. And therefore the name becomes, we have to show the position of the bromine. So 2-bromobutane. Butane is the parent name. So that's the parent name. Always end with the parent name. And then the side group is a bromo on position number 2. Next, alkynes. So alkynes ends with YNE. That means a triple bond. So you have a triple bond. An example of that is this structure here, which has carbon number 1, 2, 3, and 4 if we count from the left. If we count from the right, it will be 1, 2, 3, and 4. But we want the triple bond carbon to have the lowest position possible. So if we count from the left, we see that it's on position number 1. But if we count from the right, then it will be on position number 3. But we want the lowest possible. And therefore the name becomes 1-butene or but-1-ine. But because it's on position number 1, then we don't have to indicate that. We could just call it butane. So most of the time you just see it called butane. But if you look at this next example, the position of the triple bond is not on carbon number 1, and therefore we have to show the position on the name. Now, if you count from the left, it will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. But if we count from the right, it will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So we see from the right, the triple bond will be on position carbon number 4, but counting from the left, it will be on position number 3. So the counting from the left wins, and therefore the name of that will be 3. And then because it has 7 carbons, that's heptane. So 3 hep, instead of N, A and E is for alkane, so it becomes heptyne, because now we're dealing with triple bond. Or you could just say hept 3-ine. Next, alcohols, and alcohols have OH group. So if you look at this example here, we see that it has carbon 1, 2, 3, and 4. So it has 4 carbons, and because of that, the name becomes butane. And then, because it's an alcohol, the OH, you change the E, so butane. You change that and replace that with ol. And now the name becomes butanol. And because it's on position number 1, we could say 1-butanol, or we don't have to show that one. Or you could say butane 1-ol. Now let's look at the next structure, this one here. If we count from the right, you have carbon number 1, number 2. So the OH is on carbon number 2, and then 3 and 4. So because it has 4 carbons, it becomes butane. And then we show the position of the OH, so 2-ol. So butane 2-ol. Or you could say 2-butanol. Next functional group is ethers. Ethers contain carbon-oxygen-carbon bond. So carbon-oxygen-carbon, or alkyl group, oxygen-alkyl group. And that's called an ether. So an example of that is here, where you have an alkyl group with 2 carbons, an alkyl group with 2 carbons, 1 and 2, and then on the right you have another alkyl group, and that one has 1, 2, and 3 carbons. So how do you name this compound? The alkyl group that we have on the left has 2 carbons, and therefore the name is ethyl. Ethyl. You replace the A and E with YL, ethyl. And then on the right we have 3 carbons, and therefore the name is propyl. And then comparing E for ethyl and P for propyl, alphabetically, E comes before propyl, so the name becomes ethyl, so that one there, propyl, and then you finish with ether. Ethyl propyl ether. Let's look at the next example. So this one here, you have one alkyl group here that has 1, 2 carbons, so that's ethyl, and another alkyl group here has 1 and 2 carbons, that's another ethyl, and we know it's an ether because there's an oxygen in between, and therefore the name becomes ethyl ether. But because there are 2 ethyls, then we can combine these 2 together, it becomes di. So di is because there are 2, di-ethyl ether. Next we look at ketones. And ketones has an alkyl group on one side, a carbonyl in the middle, and another alkyl group on the other side. While an aldehyde has an alkyl group on one side, a carbonyl, and then a hydrogen on the other side. So in this example, we have an alkyl group, a carbonyl, and then another alkyl group, and that makes it a ketone. Now, how do we name this compound? You want to name it in such a way that the carbonyl group has the lowest number. So if we count from the right, it will be 1, 2, 3, and 4. So it will be on carbon number 3, which is not good. But if we count from the left, it's 1, 2, 3, and 4. So that's better. So we have to start from the left. So if we start from the left, then the carbonyl is on carbon number 2. And because it has 4 carbons, so it's still a butane, so it becomes butane, and then 2 to show the position of the carbonyl, and then you finish with ONE. So ketones have to end with ONE. So butane 2-on, or you could move that number 2 and put it before the name, and then it becomes 2-butanone. Next, we look at aldehydes, and we said aldehydes have alkyl group on one side, carbonyl in the middle, and then a hydrogen on the other side. If you look at this example here, that's an aldehyde because you have an alkyl group on this side, you have a carbonyl in the middle, and then you have a hydrogen. So how do we name that? We see that the carbon with the carbonyl is carbon number 1, and then 2, 3, and 4. It has 4 carbons, so the name becomes butane. And then because it's an aldehyde, we finish with an Al. So the name ends with Al, and therefore it becomes butanal. Next, carboxylic acids. Carboxylic acids have alkyl group, carbon-oxygen double bond, and then OH. The other way to write it will be RCO2H. So in this case, we have carbon number 1, number 2, number 3, and therefore it has 4 carbons, and therefore the name is going to be butane, but because it's a carboxylic acid, you end it with oic acid. So butanoic acid. Last one, amines. Amines contain nitrogen or NH2 or NH groups. So in this case, we see that we have the NH2 there, connected to that carbon number 1, and then 2, 3, and 4, we have 4 carbons, and because we have 4 carbons, then the name there is butane, and then we say 1 aminobutane. But because it's on carbon number 1, we don't even have to say that 1 amino, so we'll just say aminobutane. Some people can name it as alkyl amine, so in that case it will be butyl amine. Thank you very much for listening. Please support this channel by liking the videos and also by subscribing and also commenting on the videos. Thank you.